Innovative educators with Brooke Folgers. Find community, find strategies, find hope. Last week, one of my listeners asked me about referring to students and learners as kids. They asked if I did that intentionally, if I thought about how that would sound to some people, and I said it's very intentional, which sparked some thinking about maybe I need to clarify for listeners why I say kids often in this podcast when I am talking about learners, our students in the K-12 education system. When we are in the K-12 education system, we are working with kids. They're just children. Some of you may say, well, in high school, they turn 18. Yes, but that's the very, very end of high school. And I see many educators, specifically in the high school setting, expecting 14 and 15-year-olds to come into high school ready to be adults with adult skills. So I say kids to trigger a part in your brain to remind you that the students in front of us that are learners are still under construction. They are learners. They are still learning. And it is our primary job working with children to equip them not only with content knowledge, but with interpersonal skills, communication skills, self-management skills that they need before they enter the adult world. And when we don't do that, what we are doing is engaging in a process of adultification. Adultification isn't just treating kids like an adult, but it's a bias where you perceive children as being more mature, less innocent, and therefore more capable and more responsible than they actually are. There is a report that came out a while ago about this called Girlhood Interrupted from Georgetown Law, which I still think is a very wonderful and informative report about this topic of adultification that defines it as the bias of perceiving children as more mature, older, more skilled than they are. And it's also a process of socialization where children function, and I'm quoting from the report here, where children function at a more mature developmental stage because of situational context and necessity, especially in low-resource community environments, end quote. So that's also referencing the fact that many of our students do have to engage in adult things like having a job to earn money to contribute to their family, being a caretaker of children. That socialization process where they are forced to do mature things because of being in a low resource environment. With both definitions of adultification, both the bias and the socialization, we are stripping away the buffer of childhood. We're not viewing students making mistakes or having poor judgment as developmental milestones and opportunities for learning. Rather, we're seeing them as flaws of character or intentionally defiant actions. While students may intentionally do things that are counter to what we would hope them to do, if we do not treat those as learning opportunities and do not give children the opportunity to learn differently, we are engaging in adultification. According to the Georgetown Law Report, it also discusses how this adultification is disproportionately impacting Black and Brown students, therefore leading to a disproportionate exclusion from school of Black and Brown students. I also want to recognize my positionality here. I am a white woman who teaches in a Title I high school. And when I engage with students, and I think about adultification, this is not a reason to excuse behavior. Rather, this is a reason to have a high standard for all students in academic, personal growth, and social skills, and the perspective that I will teach all students the skills so that they can reach that expectation. If we want to innovate education, we have to be willing to see things like adultification when it's occurring and to do something about it. So, where might this adultification bias be showing up? First, adultification often shows up in our discipline. Why is it that some students, when they talk back, are sent out from class and suspended, and other students, it is viewed as, oh, you had a bad moment. You said something you didn't mean to. We view it as, for some students, as intentional, and some students as they've had a rough day. It's been a stressful day. These are kids who are lacking impulse control and are still learning how to manage a lot of big emotions and, frankly, a very stressful and overwhelming world. So, the reaction is not to excuse, but to teach how to react differently. So, that's the first place adultification shows up, is in our discipline. The other way it might be showing up in our discipline is due to the physicality of some students. I am a small 5'3" person, and when a 6'2", 200-pound boy with a beard walks in my ninth grade English class, I unconsciously expect more maturity from him because of, frankly, how he looks. And what I don't want to do is deny that student, because of how they look, because of something they literally can't control, the opportunity to learn and develop the skills they need in the world. Because if that student looks that way as a 14 or 15-year-old kid, often the boys, then when they are out in the world engaging in society, it is highly likely that other adults who may not be safe adults will view them in the same way, which could lead to some very harmful situations for that child. So it is our job to see that kid and remember they are just a kid who still has things to learn. The other thing that can lead to adultification is kids who use adult language, whether that be slang or posturing or tone, or even the things that they talk about engaging with, may lead us to view them as older than they are. When in reality, these are kids just trying to be cool, trying to fit in, trying to communicate to everyone that they got things figured out. I'm an adult and I don't have things figured out. And it is unfair for us to put the expectation on kids just because they're putting on an act that they are somehow more mature than others. The other ways adultification can show up is in the choices we are having kids make. In the school system I work in, 10th graders are basically choosing the path for the rest of their high school career at the end of first semester of 10th grade. So 15-year-olds with only a year and a half of high school under their belt are choosing from different academic programs, from the opportunity to go to a trade school, to get college credits. They have all these choices, and they are being asked to make a choice at 15 or 16 years old that will have implications for a long, long, long after high school. We are asking them to have a 30-year-old view of their lives when they are only 15 years old. A few other reasons why adultification is a problem. I've touched on the inequity of it all. But there's also this piece specifically in secondary education where we say we're preparing students for the real world. But often that's used as an excuse to deny them the grace and the learning that they still need in their lives. There's a difference between high expectations and adultification. There's a difference between, you should already know how to do this, therefore I'm not going to help you figure out how to do it, and I know you're capable of this high level work. Let's figure out what you need to learn to get there. This requires us believing the best of students. This requires us believing that our learners are showing up every day and desire to learn. I'm sure that there are some Maybe students who come to mind when I say that and you think they don't show up ready to learn. And I would ask though, if a student has entered your mind, is it the majority? We can always think of a one-off case or that one student who we just can't figure out. Majority of our students are showing up to learn, and they need you to believe they are capable and show them how to reach the high expectations you hold for them. Adultification in the secondary setting also can mean that we are denying leadership opportunities or learning opportunities for students to learn about things like college and career. I've met so many seniors in high school who've still never been on a college campus, who still don't understand what high school credits mean. There are a lot of different factors that impact that. In my setting, it is not for a lack of trying, but for a lack of being willing to dedicate the time to do so. And I think we kind of just hope by the time they're seniors that kids have somehow absorbed the knowledge that they need to know about opportunities for them after high school. They don't. We need to show them, teach them, and give them experiences for them to see what life can be like after high school. Adultification is also a problem, especially for our kids who do have to engage in adult things outside of school, like caring for younger siblings or contributing financially to the household. They're experiencing adult things. That does not mean that we deny them the learning that kids need in schools. Schools should be the place where all kids get to be learners, where they are allowed to make mistakes and figure out how to do it differently and are given the opportunity to grow. The stakes in high school are credits and grades. Those stakes are very different than being able to buy food or someone being able to stay home with a baby. When we put it in that perspective, I would hope that we can view school as, yes, we have high expectations for students, but in reality, this is the place where they need to make the mistakes and try things out and be given the opportunity to be shown and learn replacement behaviors for those things that we know need to be changed before they leave our school. So, what can we do about the adultification that is prevalent specifically in the secondary setting? First, rather than viewing a unwanted behavior as, for example, lazy, how can we view the behavior we're witnessing as unskilled? So instead of lazy, it's they lack task initiation skills. Lazy assumes that a student is choosing to opt out rather than they don't know how to start the task. So, how can we view the behavior we're seeing as unskilled? The second thing we need to think about then is, what have I done to teach kids a replacement behavior? Have we taught kids how to ask a question when they don't know how to get started? Have we given kids 3 ways to get started to try on and figure out what's best for them? Or do we just say, if you're not going to work, then just leave my class? If we have not taught a replacement behavior, we cannot fault kids for it. So, what have I done to teach a kid a replacement behavior? And then after that is, how do I assess the success of that teaching? After I taught the replacement behavior, did students have a chance to practice? Was it just in a lecture format with no low stakes practice with maybe a non-content example? If we go back to the example of being lazy, how could we give students a opportunity to practice task initiation with something like, if we go back to what I said previously about viewing lazy as students lacking task initiation skills, after we teach some ways to start a task, could we have an example that is a non-content example that students practice with? Such as, you are at the grocery store and you have a grocery list. How are you going to approach this? Or you are going to the park to do a park cleanup. How do you decide how to start this task? Ask students to give feedback, to talk about it, and then ask them to translate it to classwork. So if you're going to the park for a park cleanup, maybe some students will start where there is the most trash, there's the most to do. How does that translate to class? Maybe it's starting with the most difficult problem and doing that first. That can apply to any content area. Give students the opportunity to practice and think through these replacement behaviors in a low-stakes environment, often best done without school examples. The final way we can start to impact the negative results of adultification is in our conversation with other adults. I'm sure we've all heard teachers say, he just needs to grow up. In the real world, he would be fired if he did that. They would never get a job with that attitude. They're not yet adults in the real world with a whole rest of their adulthood life together. We still have them for a few years. We still have an opportunity with them to teach them. So I would challenge you when adults are saying things of that nature, are adultifying the kids in their classroom, to give them a gentle reminder. This could sound like, you're right. He does show up and he's acting really tough, and maybe if he said that in a workplace, it wouldn't go well, but he's only 15. He's literally still growing. So what are the skills he's missing before he gets in the real world, and how can we help him learn that? Or what skill do you think is most important for him to learn from you this year with that in mind? We have to reframe kids as kids. Adultification is lessening learning opportunities for students. It's also lessening our opportunities to undo institutional bias and institutional harm that has been done specifically to our Black and brown students. They're all kids, even the ones who don't look like it, even the ones who don't want to act like it, even the ones who make it hardest to remember. Just remember, they're still kids. If you have some ideas after today's episode, make sure to follow the show so you don't miss what's next. Leaving a quick review really helps us reach more innovative educators. Join us next Tuesday.